Hamen, we're back again.
Hey, we're back.
Let's rock and roll. So
Yes, excited for the session.
we're going to talk about influencer marketing in a couple of different contexts. How you can use influencer marketing to, for example, launch your business from scratch, as in go from zero, and maybe use it as a strategy to offset paid ads completely and not use paid ads if you're low on capital. And then we're also going to use or discuss kind of influencer marketing in respect to how to actually use it as a strategy to amplify paid ads. So interesting subject. I think it's a very kind of
Absolutely.
like trending topic in terms of people want to know how to get in touch with influencers, use influencers strategically, kind of like leverage what they do. So very 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 excited about this one. I think this is going to be a really interesting kind of conversation and a strategy that we can unpack for people.
Absolutely. I think it's a really great topic, particularly when you look at right now with the platforms like you have TikTok Shop, like so many options out there that's kind of a channel that's ignored. And
Mm,
if you look at it, it's the one where you have warm traffic really converting right away. So it's really a great,
mm.
I would say, strategy to work on this if you're launching, if you're scaling, it doesn't really matter. Depending on, let's say, how you look at it, I'm trying to always think about like what's the value of a channel or what the value of a strategy. This is the one that would work with any business. Like you're launching from 0 to 10K, 10K to 100K, it doesn't matter. Influencer marketing is so crucial.
Yeah. So let's dive into this kind of like perhaps how to use this as a strategy to grow your business from zero, right? Assuming like I've got a product, I've got a website, and I'm kind of like, okay, cool. I'm trying to generate my first sales. Maybe let's just start with some definitions of what do you think influencer marketing is, so people are really kind of like aware, and you can give your definition, and I can give my definition, and we can come together around that first, and then we can kind of unpack exactly some different scenarios that people can follow.
Yes, absolutely. So just to start, maybe in terms of like what is influencer marketing? I think about influencer marketing as a strategy where you work with like it's kind of collaboration
Mm,
with a person that does have some influence, and that's why like there's a word influencer there. And the goal most of the time is to promote your products
mm,
using their authority. So that's kind of my view in terms of the influencer marketing. And
yeah,
the goal regardless of the channel is to work with a person that would just help you drive sales. So that's how I
mm.
would view it. I'm curious about how you look at it from, let's say, a perspective of it's like the word itself or kind of the platforms, like are you looking at it from, let's say, a perspective of like influencer marketing where leveraging all type of influencers or just for e-commerce? Like how would you look at it?
Yeah, good question actually. That's interesting. So I think that it influence like yeah, from a definition perspective, I look at it very very similarly in terms of like paying somebody with an audience that's aligned with your brand or what it is that you sell, and they can kind of like take the eyeballs that they have collected through whether it's content creation, whether it's building a platform, whether it's building a presence on a particular platform, and rather than them directing that attention towards, for example, a new video of theirs or a new piece of content or something else that they might kind of promote to their audience, they replace that with your product, which tends to like it definitely benefits when there's a really strong synergy and alignment between like their audience and then also your product. I think that's the main key
Yes.
thing. And I think the thing that I've observed a lot, especially in the last like 5 to maybe 7 years, is I would say I do recall when I first started getting into the online digital space about 7 years ago, influencers were these kind of like holographic kind of Pokemon, right? Where it was like these big profiles, they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and it was a big shift between like the everyday, social media user and then the
Yep. And
influencer.
the
And they were
big influencers.
this prized like unicorn that they get paid all the money, they have all the followers, and it was wow, like a big thing. And there was these huge premiums that would have to be placed on like creating content. If you were an influencer, there was so much demand to just get these influencers. And I think
Yes.
some of the companies, for example, like, High Smile as an example, I know they really leveraged off of, some of those bigger influencers in the
Yes.
earlier days when they had so much kind of relevance and they had so much authority. And what I'm seeing now, especially for the last probably 3 years, perhaps 4 years, is that these, smaller influencers with influence over maybe 10,000 followers, 15, 5,000 followers, but a very, 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 tight and high potency concentration of audience are really, really, really generating fantastic results because they're so, so, so close with their
Targeted.
audience
Yes.
and some of these bigger influencers that I've seen and observed, they might not get very much engagement or sales or kind of produce too much at all. So it's a very interesting change. And I think people are orienting massively towards like, I want to trust this person, and I think that's the ultimate kind of like
Yeah.
goal if you're wanting to work with this.
Yeah, I think the same thing. It's like technically when I looked at influencer marketing years ago, I was like, I was not thinking that actually I can work with an influencer. I thought always that
Yes.
is kind of an invitation and like a like something that I need to like I can't just access. I was like, this is not something I should think about. And then I saw on social media that, influencers are actually waiting for you to contact them to work with you. And it's
Mm,
almost like a door that's opened and I was not aware of it. For me, there was always like kind of a this is like a challenging thing to talk to celebrities. Like you just, you can't. And social media made it much easier. So in the days, this is how I looked
mm,
at it. But I was actually not. I think maybe I'm really curious about your view on this. I was not sure what's actually like an influence, like how many followers. Because in the past, I
mm.
was impressed by 500 followers, 400 followers. Like, hey, this is a lot.
Interesting.
So I'm curious about like what type of, I would say, volume you would look at in terms of influencers, because I know that there are like micro influencers, there are like
Yeah.
I would say let's say probably like mid tiers, and then you have the macro. So I'm curious about what levels would you consider like this is like a small influencer versus a big one, and
Mm.
what would you consider an influencer? Like how many followers? Is it like a followers numbers? Like, what would you look
Yeah,
at? I'm
that's an interesting. There's probably I probably need to speak to Taryn, for example. She runs that kind of that company, hashtag gifted, and she's an influencer marketing absolute weapon. So I'll probably have to lean on her a little bit for the definitions of at this level equals macro, at this level equals micro. I would assume, somewhere around that maybe 5 to 10,000 mark of like followers, maybe 2 or 3,000. The interesting thing is we use a little bit of this strategy in odds fishing shirts, and not terribly like intentionally with the goal to drive sales, but more so with the goal to generate great content and leverage from kind of like some fishing type influencer brands and fishing type influencer audiences, and they might have like 3,000 or 5,000 or maybe 7,000 followers. However, it's a really interesting page that has like fishing content. It's a person that's like exactly our demographic. And we don't actually do like a full collaboration, but they just post some content for us in exchange for, some shirts, right? And so we get a lot of traffic, a lot of engagement, a lot of followers, and subsequently a lot of sales as well. And it's very interesting because you don't really expect it to come from these small profiles, but they have a
yeah.
real high degree of like potency. So I would say anywhere around that kind of like 3 to 10,000 mark would be sufficient enough to be like they have influence enough to make an impact on, your business or generate some sales.
Yeah, I think really like if I was to classify them like that, that's actually the level I would look at personally. Same thing.
Mm,
And in the past, this was like influencer marketing was a way to build capital. China is not necessarily right now positioned like that, but I remember like it's probably 2017 every business launching, they were thinking, hey, how is to build
mm,
like a little bit of money and work with one person and make, let's say, 2,000 and then take that money and then put it back. And that was a way to build capital. And for the levels of influencers, I actually looked at it a lot in the past. Like I was like, okay, what's like the like what are the tiers and what should I look at in terms of numbers? And I remember I had like with with an agency owner, he was like telling me a little bit about the volume, and he was like, it doesn't really matter. Like
mm.
like you can say this is a nano influencer, you can say this is a macro influencer. Just the goal is, do they have actually influence in that audience for the over that
Yeah,
audience? And it's actually what you mentioned with off fishing example, like a page that just have a few thousands, and there's value, like they can convert
yeah,
because people would look at their content versus someone building an audience that actually doesn't really listen to them. They don't have any influence. So the number
right,
itself might be just a number versus actually the power behind it, which most of the
right.
time is authority, content. And I've seen cases where a small page, like 5,000, would make so much sales, and one with
Yeah.
100,000 doesn't make any. So that's
Mm,
something that I would look at in terms of, let's say, influence. And I think there is like nano influencers. Most of the time, they consider them under 10,000. Micro would be between 10, I would say probably in 50K to 100K, and then macro above that. Those are probably
yeah,
the tiers that I would look at in general. So I'm
yeah.
curious about one other thing you mentioned, like the influence and picking them and working with them. Do you think that like it just exchanging versus like I give them the product, they give me, let's say that like, they do the promotion, or what are kind of, let's say, the compensations and way to navigate that?
Yeah, well, I think like say for example we're starting out and like the brand is brand new, so like I always look at it from the perspective like sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to give away too much of my product sales, or I don't want to give away more than like 10%, or I don't want to give away more than like 20%. And so like the way that I look at it, especially with like a form of a partnership or a form of collaboration, especially when you're starting from zero, it's like, okay, so I don't have any sales to begin with. Right. So I'm at zero. Right. And so the great thing about like the influencer marketing thing as well is it's also fixed. Right. It's like
Yes.
assuming that like you don't, randomly make changes to your commission structure. But say, for example, you fix it at 30%, which might be similar to your cost of acquisition. And you just go, great. You've
I'll just pay
essentially,
one time
right. And you've just warranted yourself a consistent 3x ROAS
without
constantly
any problem.
overall, so. I think that's one of the main benefits that I look at with it. And in terms of like the negotiations and the strategy, I think the one flaw that I find in terms of people kind of like wanting to use this strategy is that they speak to like two or three people, or maybe four or five people, and then they're like, oh, they didn't want to work with me. They weren't too interested. Oh, it seems like this strategy doesn't work. And they've spoken to like four or five people, you
Yes,
know,
four.
and so and so I think the really important thing is with it, like you need to really have those conversations, and it's like when you are, starting out, and say for example you're using this as a strategy to generate capital rather than just get brand exposure. You're like, I'm here to make money with this. I don't have money for paid ads. I want to make my first cash using influencer marketing. You need to use your time as the resource and spend the time doing the
Absolutely.
outreach, spend the time creating the relationships, spend the time doing the partnerships, and do like 50 different outreach messages a day with these different, potential
Yes.
audiences and people in those audiences to create that connection. And then from there, you're like, okay, I've got five, six, I've got 10, I've got 15
Yeah.
that are all actively promoting. And then, and the great thing is now more than 5, 6, 7 years ago when I first started, with these smaller influencers, these micro influencers, nano influencers, there's such a demand for people to they want to be influencers, right?
Yes.
Like
And they're passionate about it.
they want to
Yes.
be posting content. They want to be receiving gifts in the mail. They want to be unboxing the things because it's cool and it's fun. And they've seen their other friends. They've seen the people with the 1 million followers,
Yes.
build this massive audience, sending stuff and receiving stuff and posting videos and talking about it. So there's such a big hype around it. And so it doesn't take too much kind of negotiation, assuming that you have, a good product and a good brand, to have some conversations and be like, this is what we're doing. This is the brand vision. I'd love to have you on board so we can grow this business. It's very exciting. I can give you X amount of my product sales for the first 100 sales. Like, I'd love to have you on board and just create a sales process that you bring in
Absolutely.
50, 60, 70 of these people, and they can really make an impact on
Yes.
your business from 0 to 1.
Absolutely. So this is actually a very exciting topic when I think about it, like how much growth you can do just working with people without any paid ads. Like if I was to think about it, the challenge most of the time with paid ads, maybe the data expertise. In this case, there's no need for that. You need to talk to people. And if you think about it in terms of when you're launching, particularly, it's really an easy one because you don't have to understand the data. There is no heavy lifting of, hey, I need to really look at this ad account every single day at this time. It's like that pain is not there. You're just working with a person and they're doing all the work for you. And I think that that's
Correct.
pretty good in terms of positioning. One thing that I would look at is when you're looking at particularly influencer marketing, you have when you look at the compensation and then you're looking at like that process of connecting with an influencer. I've seen cases where a person would do exactly what you mentioned. They reach to four people, like reach out to four and like, hey, it's not working. And you're doing
Yeah.
four. And the
Yeah.
number would be like you need to do 20, 30, 50 a day just to really get some, I would say,
Correct.
responses over the next 7 to 10 days and or even 30 days. And that's the challenge. Like when I put in what is the challenge with influencer marketing, it is that commitment to connecting with people. And it doesn't mean when I say 50, I'm like, hey, we can't DM 50 people in a day because there's a limit in Instagram. I'm like, I'm not
Yes.
talking about that. I'm talking about you'll look at the influencer, you'll look at their, what other platform they're using. Most of the time they have Instagram and they have YouTube and they
Yeah.
have another way that you can connect with them. You can actually email them. They've sometimes put in, as you mentioned, they put
Correct.
this as a like for them, influencer marketing is a job right now. It's like, hey, I'm an
Correct.
influencer. Like almost like It's like they're proud of it, as you mentioned. It's like
They
really
take it, it's
something.
like a profession. Like it's like
Yes,
yeah, I take this very serious. Like I'm really proud to do this. Like
I'm an
it really,
influencer.
really, really is. Yeah.
So yes, so you can connect with them not just with the DMs. You can also, send them a message with it if they have their inbox, like their email in there, and you can also look at their YouTube and contact them in there.
Mm,
I've seen cases
mm,
where if I was to look at, let's say, a quick strategy, let's say you're launching your business, you don't know what to do. I'll give you like a quick kind of a strategy to get things going. I would probably create a Google Sheet and I would start listing all the influencers in the space using hashtag and Instagram. So pretty much look at, okay, I'm selling, let's say, a yoga mat, right? So I will put in yoga mat. You're gonna see so many people talking about this topic. Pretty much
yeah.
look at their followers. Look at what they're following. Who they're following. Who are the people that are advertising? I would say the space, not necessarily the product, just the space. They're
Right.
doing,
Right.
exercise. They're showing things. Those you should put them in your list and start contacting them. When you look at an influencer, they might have the door open Instagram and like, hey, you can actually reach out. They might not. If they don't have that, you should look at, do they have a YouTube channel? If they have a YouTube channel, look at the YouTube channel, comment on a YouTube video. Hey, I want to work with you. And most of the time, if they
Exactly.
have a YouTube channel with not a lot of views, they're gonna look more at people contacting them in there. It's like they have
Correct.
like so much noise in Instagram, they don't have a noise in YouTube. And this actually is a strategy that I used in the past where I would look at an influencer, they have, let's say, 1 million followers on Instagram, and they have like probably 100K or 50K with not much views on YouTube, and they read the
Mm,
comments. So I literally comment on YouTube, are you open for the collab? And I had one
mm,
collab completely start, like the start point was YouTube, commenting on their videos. And I was really pushing all the videos. The moment they publish, I would comment right away. Hey, we
mm.
have this, brand, and we're really happy to work with you. And at one moment they're like, hey, probably this brand like really sticky. Let's work with them.
Yeah.
And then they actually, this was a way to connect and build that list. So reach out to people if it's again the strategy, or if you want to really get this going, build that list in a Google Sheet, contact them, do 20 to 50 a day. Don't really get
Mm,
discouraged if you don't see people responding to you, just or brands. Keep this going for 30 days and look at the impact. Look at how
yeah.
many options you have. I think that's going to be probably a great strategy to start with in terms of influencer
Mm.
marketing from 0 to 10K.
And I think it's one of those things as well. Like as we were talking about this right now, I remember I opened a Tik not a TikTok, an X account, Twitter account, right? And I was like, oh, I really like writing and kind of like, copywriting the written word. I think that it's interesting. I enjoy writing, and I feel like I want to post more kind of content of me writing stuff. And I open this I open this X account, and I start posting right on this X account. And I did the first day, I did 2 posts. I had no engagement at all, and I was like, wow, this is really this is really humbling.
Yes,
The
it's like
second
it's new
day,
to me. I'm not used to this.
the second day I did like 2 more posts, and I got like one random engagement, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm just gonna and I stopped posting, right? And so like in my mind, I was like, what did you think was supposed to happen? You posted 4 times and you are really bad, and you have a brand new account, and you expected you were gonna get a rush of new followers. And it's like people have that same approach when it's like I spoke to 4 people on Instagram and one said no, and that maybe they don't like my brand. It's just like
That's yes, I'm thinking like I was to really give like a tip to a person listening to this. All of what you want, you need to really like think about it in terms of like if I was to look at something I want to achieve, rejection would be part of it. Like
oh God.
everything. If you think about like the no's, you're gonna hear a lot of them. You're gonna say no, 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 and then yes. And we focus
Yeah.
on like even if you look at your traffic, you send 100 people, you convert 2 or 3. Let's say that's 3% conversion rate. You got many no's, like no, we don't want it. And
Correct.
then three
Correct.
people bought, and still your business is growing. So I think about rejection as part of, I would say, the quest of getting what you want. So you're gonna get rejections, you're gonna get no's.
Yeah.
We don't want to work with you. That doesn't mean your brand have any problems or anything. It just means that this person, they're not, the right, fit for your business. So I really think
Yeah.
about, you should be excited about rejections, which I think that should be
Mm.
the thing to think about. Like I'm very excited when they say no, like, hey, we're gonna get a yes soon. So that's gonna be like
Yeah.
this no, we're gonna get the next one and it's gonna work. So I don't want most of the time to think about it as a negative thing, to getting those
Yeah.
rejections from influencers.
Yeah. No, I think it's good. A little bit off topic. I did an exercise with my team some years ago now, based around this exact concept because it's such a fundamental part of growing any business is you're going to get told no thousands of times. And so what we did is that there was this individual and he put together what's called like I think it's like 21 days of rejection. I think you can just Google it. And there was this, I think it was a Chinese guy, and he came up with this series of increasing levels of difficulties to the point where it was like you need to go and like take a flower that you bought from like the kind of the store in a pot and walk up and go to someone's house with a shovel in your hand and then ask them to plant the flower in their backyard, a complete stranger, right? And all these
Wow.
crazy different things, and we were like doing these things together as a team, and we were like putting our phones in the pocket and recording it and like
Wow.
crazy stuff, but like what you realize is that like it's just a no and someone just and it's like oh it's like going to the supermarket and asking somebody to pay for your food or
Yes.
like sitting down at the store and being like hey can you buy me lunch because I have no money like the really challenging things that in your mind you're like oh my God this is horrible and then you do it and you're like oh that was fine that was really easy
Yes.
okay I'm probably way stronger. So I think this particular stage of like using this strategy to actually generate your first cash, one of the biggest things that will get in your way is just your mindset of thinking that like,
Yes. Absolutely.
oh, if people are saying no to me, that means my product's bad. It's just you need to push through and just outwork and do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of outreaches to the point where you build an actual audience there for you to leverage from. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is how I would think about influencer marketing in terms of growth. If you're really like thinking about rejection as kind of to say, I can't do it anymore because of rejections, you're not going to be successful in influencer marketing, and probably it's going to be very challenging for you to grow your business because you're thinking about this as like a problem. I would think about it as an opportunity. If they say no, we're going to look at the next one, and you keep doing this and you're going to get results because there is always a yes. If I hear a
Mhm.
no, I know there's a yes. So by default, you should think about it like that. So it's kind of my view in terms of influencer marketing. One thing I think we should talk about probably a little bit is the compensation that we talked about in terms of product. Then there is also like obviously paying the influencer. And in the past, I think every time I was getting into a conversation with an influencer, I was not sure, like, should I tell them an amount or should I ask them how
Mm,
much? And I remember I was actually getting into it's a mistake technically to tell them my budget upfront. I'm like, hey, I'm willing
yes.
to pay $500. And they would just say yes. Like a lot of them, like, okay, maybe that's too much for this level. And I was not
Sure.
asking them about the information, like what actually do you guys want as a compensation? And then to that responding with, I would say, what we can afford. So that's something I did, and this was a mistake, in my opinion, that a lot of businesses would do. They would reach out and they think about a budget and like, hey, we're willing to pay $200 for a promotion. What do you
Yeah.
think about it? Versus, how much actually, like, what's the compensation that you guys want? Because they might want, instead of the money, they might want actually just an affiliate link and just a
Yeah.
product, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And they might want like actually just like a commission based. And there are so many ways that you can position an offer that it doesn't really make sense to start with, hey, I'll pay you $200. Because first you're paying money and you can just look at all these other options, which might not require money and you can scale them much more effectively. So I think that's going to be something that a business launching, they need to think about, like compensation with these influencers. And as I mentioned, I think let's give them by default. I think that's the easiest. Hey, what's what's the compensation that you guys work with, and that's gonna kind of get that flow going. Do you think
I
that
think
kind of
as
the
a
same thing?
Yeah, I think as a rule of thumb, like aiming for and having like around that kind of like, between 10 and 30% that you might kind of like, give away or kind of give as either like a fixed fee or a fixed amount per each sale or as a percentage, or whichever way you negotiate it. But I think that somewhere within that bracket when you're starting out is really, really good to kind of like, focus on around about that area. I think one thing that's probably important to also cover, because one challenge that I always find that people have is like, what platform do I use? Do I have to send the money myself? How do I kind of facilitate all these payments and paying these people? So I've always used, I think it's called GoAF Pro for any of my kind of like connections, collaborations, those types of things. It's a very intuitive kind of platform that has all of the, percentages. They enter their email, they enter their PayPal. It just distributes the payments very, very easily. Are there any other payments that you've used or platforms that you've used yourself?
Yes. So Actually, looking at the influencers, obviously the one you mentioned is a great one. It's a really easy one. You can literally just add it in Shopify and then, set up the structure for the payment. And also we have actually, I think in the app itself, they have influencers that they recommend. So you can actually get things going just within the app itself
Mm,
versus using the app, let's say, as a way to pay. So one way that I would do, and I did this in the past, just a little bit manual, just using, let's say they're working with you, then I would use if it's just this is again depend on the way you're paying them. So if you're paying them one time, and we're talking
mm,
about PayPal and things like that, but just one payment, and like you're not giving them like a commission or you're not giving them something in particular. So just I'll pay you once for this promotion for 24 hours. In that case, then that's going to be PayPal as a payment. And that's what I
mhm,
used a lot of times if I'm doing just payment, like one payment. If you're doing something that's recurrent, let's say you're like using a commission based and or you're paying them, let's say, a portion, then that the platform you mentioned is a great one. Sometimes we do also use PayPal, which is I think still a good platform in terms of payments. Paying
mm.
them, let's say, with a VA, releasing the payment every time we have the promotion. But most of the time, it's really like either this app or PayPal. I think those are the two ways I would pay.
Yeah.
Typically, if it's a
So
one-time payment.
just to maybe close off on that because I think that it's good to make sure that that's rounded out. So I guess like in terms of paying people, so it's like either pay them from what you've seen as well effectively, because I've always seemed to kind of work with like a fixed amount per product. That's been the most typical way that I've kind of like, tended to focus on, these types of strategies in terms of like X% per sale. Just to close the door on this to make sure this is really clear, you've also used alternative methods where it's like a fixed amount, where it might be like $500 for a certain amount of time to have posts on your grid or on your feed or
Yes.
those types of things. Is that what you're saying as well?
Exactly. So when you're looking at, let's say, marketing, you can just tell them, hey, I just want to post in your, let's say, in your like just a story. And most of the time they're going to give you, if you're really looking at pages, they have you can pay for like just a story, and you can pay for a regular post, and you can also pay for something that would be permanent, so just in their account, and it can be just 24 hours. So they actually have
Mm,
different times for different placements. So that's what I was talking about for these kind of, I would say, ads. You want to pay them one time, and it's
mm.
just I would say a PayPal payment. Just most of the time, you pay it once, they do the promotion, and then it's done.
Yeah, and so I think this is interesting because I've also used I've used this also to I guess like a further degree. Now I've used this strategy on eCom Capital, and I've also used this on another company previously as well, where they essentially do the same thing, and it's like Instagram shout outs essentially is what the
Exactly.
which is very much just like influencer marketing, except all they do, it's like agencies kind of do it for you, where they will kind of like leverage brands or pages or kind of like profiles with large amounts of kind of followings that are actually concentrated around your particular niche or your product offering, and then they do like promotional type kind of posts. So it's very 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 similar. It's just like at an individual level where you're working directly with that person, you're creating that relationship. And I think the long term benefit of this strategy as well is it also like you're able to create relationships with these people, and as your brand grows, you've got content creators, you've got additional kind of sales channels built
Yes,
out.
absolutely.
There's more stability on sale. There's a lot of really good value that can kind of
Yes.
come from this overall.
Absolutely. Like in ecom, like the strategies that I would do, and actually it's just to be clear in terms of the payments, there's like a strategy where you would do the commission based or it's a percentage, and you can just pay once, and you're actually paying them for that just that promotion. And most of the time, again, you're working directly with the influencer. But what we did in the past was pretty much after listing at that Google Sheet and contacting them and setting up the promotions, we would look at the results, and then the
Yes,
ones that really promoted, let's say they got us some sales, we would actually contact them again. Can we do a bulk deal? Can
correct,
we
correct,
actually publish in your page every Friday? And they'll be like,
correct.
okay, let's do it 4 times. And again, because it's fixed fees and you're using their influence, it's still influencer marketing. You're not paying, this is not paid ads because I'm not running an ad and just, look at the data. It's more of I'm working with this influencer using his audience and his time, but I'm paying him one time and I'm expecting sales from one payment. And I think about it like that. That's why I think it's a little bit like, hey, is this influencer marketing? Yes, in my opinion, it's still influencer marketing if you're paying
Yeah,
them for, for some placement and some ads, but it's a
correct.
one-time payment using their influence. And I think it's a warm
Yes.
audience and it's pretty much most of the time it's going to convert right away.
And this is probably a great kind of pathway or segue to move over into like using this as an amplification strategy, assuming that you are running paid ads. And so just to kind of grab what we've just talked about there and kind of add to that as well, the way that you can kind of build on that I've also seen very effective as well is assuming that, say, for example, you have some of these organic outreach strategies and some of them have worked quite well, and you're like, okay, this is good. We have two or three or four or five of these influencers that are producing consistently through, organic means and just their social channels, posting on their stories, in their grid, on their YouTube channel, whatever it might be. You can then take that and assuming you create a great relationship and a partnership with these people, you can also, go and actually promote directly from their ad accounts and their pages, and I did this with some of the big events that I ran with like other big influencers where I
Yes,
was running ads from his page and the reach and the scalability and the credibility that
absolutely.
we got was so much more powerful because it was like, well, we already know that your audience is very good. People love you and they've already proven it in organic fashion on your page. We've taken that exact same interest and just amplified it with ad spend. And
Okay.
it's like the results are fantastic. Yeah.
Amazing. Yes, actually, we have an ecom capital. One of the clients we have did actually exactly this, and it's actually Happy
Mm.
Steffico. They're doing collab ads. If you look at their page,
Yes.
which pretty much the collab structure is essentially that. So using an influencer and you pushing their, let's say, influence and your ad spend to get results, which is exactly what you mentioned, like strong push in terms of sales when you take an ad and you use the influencer and you just push everything with the ad spend. So it's really a great strategy, in my opinion, using ad spend to get that influencer marketing and meta and then push things to the next level.
Agreed. Yeah. So let's maybe think about how this might be different for a brand that's like running ads. They're scaling paid ads and they're pushing volume already as far as like sales and traffic. How would this be different from your perspective, or would it be the same exact strategy? Like, how would you kind of like recommend?
It's a little bit different because I actually was talking to some business owners that are doing like 100K plus a month. And I was talking to them about like influencer marketing and how they're leveraging it and things like that. And most of the time, it's like the same thing. Like we're using it, but we're not necessarily scaling too much with that part. Now, when I looked at this again, 100K plus, like that's kind of the level we're at. But when I had two discussion with a person that's really scaling in that market, he was like, this is not something that stores that are doing 100K would focus on. It's mainly the one doing a million plus because they're kind of
Yeah.
scaling much bigger
Mm,
numbers and they're ignoring entirely, I would say, influencer marketing. So my view on this is in terms of scaling, most of the ecom doing 100K plus, they're not necessarily exploring it as much versus
mm.
big brands. And if you look at it, influencer marketing is you get the as seen on technically because you can position more these influencers in your page. Your conversion rate might be much higher just by working with them. So you don't even just get the benefit of the ad itself, you can also use the leverage of that influencer. So if you look at a brand that's really taking the market and they want to do a million plus, as you mentioned, High Smile was an example, they really look at we can use the influence. We can add that in our page.
Mm.
That's going to increase our conversion rate. We don't even need, let's say, the promotion to work. We can just take that and use it for
Yeah.
more of the influence in the page and the ads, everything.
Correct.
So I think about it more of when you're looking at scaling, big players, that's what they're doing. When you're 100K, 50 to 100K, I would say, most of the time you're ignoring it because you don't see those benefits. You just look at, hey, I'll do one promotion. I'm going to make 1,000, but I make 20,000 a day or 10,000. I'm not necessarily that much, I would say, hyped by this. You ignore the conversion rate. That's a killer, in my opinion.
Yeah, correct, correct. I think the interesting thing I saw Naira do this with Sash beds, and so she would do not necessarily influencer marketing. She did a couple of different like direct influencer marketing campaigns, but the way that she leveraged kind of like influencers overall was more so just like organic promotional type of content that they would post on their stories and in their feeds. And so, like every single day, there would be between, say, 20 and maybe 30 influencers around Australia that would be posting, promoting, sharing stories in feed about the brand, about the product, right? And so, what I kind of observed and I looked at, and the analytics also kind of demonstrated from that was that it created this impression that the brand was everywhere, right? Because
Yes,
the interesting
absolutely.
thing, there's that, I think they call it like a tsunami strategy or tsunami approach
Yes.
where it's like you don't need to control, or you should never try and control the whole market, but it's like you can very much get into the people that you are trying to target and then the people that they watch, right? And you can kind of like position your product in all of the eyeballs around the people that they watch. And all of a sudden, the people that is your customers go, it seems like this is everywhere. But it's like
Yes.
you've created this narrative. And so I think when I recall with Sash beds, so Nayra would be like, we would walk to a cafe, we would walk to like is it, are you the Sash beds? Do you
Yes.
want? And I was like,
Creating
this
influence.
we only like the brand only did like a 300, 400,000, which was fantastic. But I'm like, the appearance and the
Yes.
appeal of that brand was as if it was like multi-million dollar a
Yes.
month, like 200 massive,
Yes,
massive
I
multinational.
think this strategy, just to let you know, about, like probably like something also popular for personal brands, and I think Andrew Tate also uses a lot in his strategy
Mm,
in terms of like growing, and pretty much what he did was using other accounts to post about him and what he's doing. And you can,
correct.
like him or hate him. That's another story. But really, what he did in terms of marketing, if you analyze it, he did leverage people, and he was really aggressive on his
Mm,
strategy to sell his digital product. Was I want you to post like all these people to post about me, post about what I do, post about things that are bad that I think about or talk about, create this viral effect that he made. Like this is like the whole trend is just him asking, probably like paying influencers on the side, posting about him, and those influencers paying others. And he created like this whole, like I would say, pyramid scheme in influencing just with his business. And I think that's a
correct.
strong way if you look at it at scale, because he actually scaled it, I think, to multi-million dollar per day probably volume. But what he did was using that influence of, if a person would post about me and that person would actually, we can kind of keep this growing, I'm going to be everywhere. They're going to talk about me.
Mm,
And I'm going to be growing my business just with that. Same thing with your brand.
mm,
Again, this is just looking at the market. Most of the time, when you
mm.
look at businesses, personal brands, you can see all these strategies and you can use them to actually grow your business. And I think it's kind of the same strategy.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you think? So now, the attention question probably comes into mind here. So I'm growing my brand. I've got majority of my kind of focus on Meta, and I'm scaling budget on Meta. Is it worthwhile me exploring, influencer marketing? Is it worthwhile looking at this as a strategy of, expansion? At what level do you think that I should do that? Like, what's your perspective on that so that we can kind of probably put some context around that as
Yes.
well?
Absolutely. So for me, influencer marketing, you should think about it all the time. It should not be like,
Mm,
hey, should I do it or you should not? I think you should always think about it. Like influencer marketing
mm,
is an easy way to get content. First thing, think about just content. What do you need to run the
mm,
ads? You need content. So if you work with
mm,
influencers, you technically get an infinite amount of content. So it's
mm,
technically helping your business grow much faster just by getting content. Now that's the first thing. Second thing is why like influencer marketing, I would say it should be your prioritize. Like you should prioritize this when you're running ads in Meta, is because you create that, as we talked about, that kind of way to put in more of that social proof in your landing page, and you can
mm,
increase your conversion rate. So there's also social proof that you add. So you get content social proof. That would increase your ROI. So if you're running ads,
mm,
you're thinking, hey, how can I get better performance? Some influencer
mm.
marketing might help. And you can really get some content that you can leverage for your, paid ads. And you can also add it in your page when they see that you have 5 to 6 popular influencers talking about your product.
Yeah.
It does like give you this celebrity effect, and people will trust you more. And if you think about the
Yeah.
one reason people don't buy from you, because if they don't trust you, they probably have a problem, but they
Correct.
don't trust you.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that the thing to borrow from like is really the trust and the credibility that these other individuals have, the influencers, right? And so it's like I don't know this brand, but she knows it, he knows it, and she
Yes,
also buys from it, and they all use the product, therefore it must be good, right? And it's like
yes,
you just like don't have the same skepticism. All of that kind of
yes.
goes away. It fades much
Trust.
lower, and all of a sudden you trust so much higher. So I think that's it's a good point to kind of raise there because like you can look at it from the perspective of like, all right, let me set this up as a channel, right, to really drive sales, which is kind of what we discussed in terms of like the first zero to your first money and really using that as like a full-on mechanism. And then the other option is I think when you actually do start to, get 100K a month, 200K a month in your business, or even, 50, 60, 70K a month, allocating whether it might be like $1,000 a month to maybe a VA to outreach all of the influencers in that particular niche and demographic, put it into a spreadsheet, and just get a list of your hyper targeted people within 10,000 followers up to whatever that bracket is, and you know exactly what to do. I
Exactly.
remember the strategy that Naira deployed with Sash beds. This was so effective. She had such a high conversion rate in terms of the conversations. It was very simple. It was just simply that she would go through the feed, and she eventually set this up so that a VA would do this. She would go through the feed, and they would find like a photo of the influencer with the dog, right? And it would be like, it would take that influencer and the dog, and then share that to the DM, because when you share that to the DM, it avoids going into the kind of like message requests. It goes into like, more of the general, or maybe like the request, but it doesn't go into the very back door hidden of Instagram,
Yes.
right?
Spams.
Exactly. And so when you see that in the DM, it also looks like, oh, something's been shared. Someone shared something with you, so you're more prompted to open it. The conversion rate on those messages was like 60-70%. But the key thing was to it that she had a really fantastic brand. And so people would open it, and it was just a simple one liner that was like, would dog's name want one? Question mark. That's it.
That's a
There was
strong, that's
there was
strong
there was
hook.
there was no like massive messages. I don't know about you, but I get it all the time. These like massively long messages
Yes.
pitching these
It's like a
crazy.
like you can't even read it. Like, hey, this is like
It's
too long.
You expect me to read all of this? I'm like, like, how much time do you have? It's just like, just get to the point. And so I think that's why it was so effective. And I think also like sharing that post from their feed, or sharing a post from the feed, it's like visually you look at it, you have so much love for the dog, and you're just like, oh yeah, of course, absolutely, of course I would. So I think also from the perspective of like simplifying it, because I think sometimes it's like, what do I say? What's the script? What's the conversation? Like, I used to watch her doing this day to day, and she would have like, her DMs would be like, you couldn't even reply to them all. They would be fighting over
So
who
much
could get.
options.
It was like they all want the product. They all want the product, and it
Yes.
was crazy just because like the brand was built like that. And once so many influencers had seen their friends and everybody wanting
Yes.
it, it's
That's
like
that they want to work with you. That's the thing. You
it's like
create
a
influence. They're actually
frenzy.
yes,
Exactly,
actually
exactly.
waiting for you to reach out. Like, hey, we're waiting. We see you like work with all these brands. So yeah,
Can I
that's actually
can I get
that.
a product? Can I get one, please? Is it possible for me to get mine now? Yeah,
Yes, I think actually that's a point. When you're starting out, you need to get that ball rolling. You need to connect with multiple influencers to actually be positioned where they know you worked with this person. They're gonna work more
correct.
with you. That's actually open door. Like you can work with more
Mm.
influencers if you have those first, I would say, promotions going.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think it's a, and even if you like, I think from my perspective, because I know sometimes, and I talk about this a lot, and I think this is very important to like when you are, in the zone, and you've got your meta ads, and you're driving, sales on one platform. For me personally, I'm always like, do one thing and do it really well, and just optimize to actually crush meta as an example. I think the exception, or maybe not the exception, but the contingency a little bit to that is like you mentioned as well. And I think that there's just a fundamental part of running really effective meta ads is content. And
Yes.
just to kind of like, source back to when Naira was also running Sashbeds, there was not one time ever that she ever had to get content created. There was no content creation
Yes.
fees. There was no agencies. It was just
Think about the competition. Think about the
on
competition.
on
They can't
demand.
keep up with us.
It was like, how do I post all this? What do I do with all this? Like, this is just like more than I can ever imagine. And so like, I don't know about you, but I know for all of our brands, it's like, how do I produce enough content? How much does it
Yes.
cost to produce content? We spend thousands of dollars every single month, tens of thousands maybe, on content creation, editing of content, production of content. And it's like, if we can
Yes.
have that on demand from people that are just incredibly pumped to work with me because they love the brand, it's fantastic. It's a
Yes,
really
I think
powerful.
about it as a leverage as well. Like the way you mention it, it's actually, again, you want to focus on one thing, that's always the case, and scale it. But if I was to tell you that there is a component that if you use, you can actually make it easier to scale. And that's for me, influencer marketing. As you mentioned, it's really an exception in terms of that rule. And particularly when you start, let's say you don't have any influence, I would think about this as you're kind of feeding the machine. So you can create something, and that's going to make it much easier. In your competition, they're not going to do this. They're going to just focus on the ads. So they're actually going to be
Correct.
controlling that leverage. So your goal would be if I was to work on this, then they're going to have a problem because I can just get so much content and they're going to be not necessarily able to compete on the long run just because I have this influence that I'm positioning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really really powerful strategy. What would you say just to kind of like maybe put people at ease because I guess like listening to this right now is like, oh wow, like another thing to do. Wow, this great. Let's add another thing to all the,
Yeah,
spare time that I have
the
in my day.
actionable thing.
Right. How much time do you think you would allocate to this? Let's talk about both of these different avatars, right? So someone who's kind of like starting out and they're like, all right, I'm not making any money yet. I want to go from zero to my first $10,000 in sales. How much time would you spend doing this? And then also let's talk about the other individual who's making, say, 100 grand a month, and they're like, just using Facebook ads, they're using content agencies, and they're trying to build up some kind of like, content from influencers maybe. How much time would you say you'd allocate towards, this particular strategy or this channel?
Exactly. So the first one, you don't have the capital, so you don't have money, right? So if you don't have money, you have time. So we need to focus on maybe kind of putting those two challenges. Like let's say you have a business that's making money, then you can invest a little bit in the automation part and you can hire someone. If you're starting out, you don't want to, look at it from a perspective of I need to, have a VA and automate that. You need to think about I need to make money. And I need to make
Mm,
money without necessarily any cost. So if you're starting out, I'm more going to be putting this as I need to invest my time in this and I'm gonna not necessarily look at automation. So in that case I'll probably put in 2 to 5 hours a week. I think that's a reasonable time, and it's
yeah.
really, I know it's like a lot of time, like 2 to 5 hours, but your goal would be building that Google Sheet and reaching out every single day. I would say probably I would put in like a structure to simplify this. Keep in mind that with AI, you have tools that would actually DM automatically. People have a lot of things that you can leverage, and maybe we can talk about that in another session in terms of AI tools.
Correct.
There's actually one AI tool that just auto DM. So pretty much, you can automate things. But if I was to say I don't have time and I want to pay for tools, I'll look at can I do it? Can I actually do every day 5 influencers or 10 or 20 and keep that momentum going with again significant amount of time because I don't have the money to hire people. That's going to be probably a more commitment in time, but you're going to get results because one influencer promotion is working, you're going to make money. So you're not exchanging, I would say, capital or money for sales. You're more putting your time in as a resource, which again, I know it's challenging, but that's when you don't have the capital. If you're a store
Mm,
that's already making money, then you can think about this as a content expense. So instead of paying for content, you can pay an influencer, and you can also have everything that would work already for the customer team. So you already have probably a VA that's working for you. You can just allocate some of their time into this category
mm.
where they automate the process for you. So they do everything in terms of reaching out, responding in time, and also connecting with influencers. As I mentioned, sometimes you send a DM, they don't respond, and you need to look at the other channel they're using. The example you
Yeah.
actually mentioned with X when you opened the account and you didn't get responses,
Yes.
right? If I was to message you in X, probably you'd have like read it. You're like, hey,
Correct.
I don't have a lot
Correct.
of influence in here, but this person messaged me, then I will respond because, or I would see it at least because I don't
Oh
have a
yeah.
lot of, let's say, noise. And influencers, they have the same problem. They have one platform or one channel where so much noise and another one where they're looking to grow it. They're really passionate about it and it's not giving them
Correct.
results. If you ask them things on YouTube where they're not really big, they're going to
Mm.
respond and or they're going to see it. Same thing with e-commerce. So that's going to be the structure in terms of using that with a VA if you're in that 50K plus. So you're going to automate things.
I love that. I love that strategy. It reminds me a lot of like even this book that I've got behind me, this Art of War, right? Like he talks about, it's like never strike your enemy where they are at their strongest point. It's like you go, and it's the same thing. It's like these influencers. They have like 1 million followers, 50K followers on Instagram, as an example. But they have like I don't know 1,000 on YouTube. It's like
Yes.
don't go into the same list as everyone else and put your hand up and say, "Hey,
Go to
excuse
the
me,
other
excuse
place.
go to where they are weakest and
Yes.
exploit their flanks. Like it makes so much sense. Yeah, I think it's really, really, really helpful. I think my perspective on the time allocation is definitely like when you are in those earlier stages, like just do the grunt work. Like do the damn grunt work and sit there and send the messages and send them aggressively like you are going to get what you want. There was a friend of mine that I was like going to the shop with recently. We had to go and get some camera equipment, and we went to walk into a JB Hi-Fi, one of those shops where all the camera equipment was, and they were just about to close, and the people at the door were like standing there, and they were waiting for people to kind of come out, but they were not letting anyone in. And it was just after like 5 o'clock, right? And so we walked
We're
towards the
closed.
door. We walked towards the door, and the lady's like, "Oh no, no, sorry, you can't come in. You can't come in." And the friend that I was with, he like turned around and was like, "Oh, okay," and started walking away.
It's a
And
no. I'm like, hey, it's just here.
I was like, no, I'm going to get the thing. It's right there. Like we came all
What
this
is
way, right? And it's just like it's the same. Like usually you're just right at the edge there, and you need to push a little bit harder and actually get the result. And I think this platform, this strategy, particularly with influencer marketing, you can have so much of the my product's not good enough. What am I supposed to pay these people? They are more successful than me. They're going to look at my brand like, is it even a real company? Like all of these types of things, you need to just overcome those things and be like, I'm out there getting what I want. I
yes,
think it's a crucial part to being
absolutely.
successful. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm always actually thinking about, can I be the exception? Can I be the exception? Can I be the exception? It's like
Yeah.
when you think about it, like when you put this as a perspective, that everything makes sense. Like I will do the collabs. I'll build my business. I'll make the million. I'll be the exception. You need to do the
Yeah.
work. So in my opinion,
Yeah.
if you're thinking, hey, I should not do it, it's not gonna work, think about I need to be the exception. I'll make it happen. And even if let's say the odds are not in my favor, I'll make it happen. And if
Yeah.
you keep that mindset, then you're gonna, grow your business. You're gonna work with a lot of influencers. You're gonna make things happen.
I love what, and we'll probably close on something like this, but I love what Alex Hormozy says about this in terms of just like, um, you should never try and be normal, right? Because he's like a lot
Yes.
of people are like, oh, like what I'm doing feels like really strange, and it feels like it's not normal, and then people are judging me, and people are looking at me weird, and I feel like I'm not really fitting in. And so it's like what you're trying to do in terms of building a business and getting extremely wealthy is very abnormal. Like it's not
Yes.
normal. So it's like you should never like judge
Think
yourself
about it
based
like
on the
this is
fact, oh,
normal. No.
I need to try and fit in with the normal people while trying to do something completely
Yes.
abnormal. Like it makes no sense at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if someone would tell you, actually, I also, I think Alex Hormozy would say, like, he said this, someone would tell you, hey, you're not normal. You should think about, hey, I'm exceptional. That's actually, that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm not normal.
Yeah, I love it. Very good. So, just in closing, I think this has been a really interesting concept, and I know we do cover off and we discuss and share a lot of these concepts in a lot greater detail
Yes.
overall. So, again, if you're listening to this and you want to get help with your brand in terms of whichever stage you're up to, if you want to help, scale to $500,000 a month, $1 million a month, we have some really interesting programs and services that we are launching at the moment, which are very exciting to help bigger companies. And we also have fantastic services for people who are looking to, launch their first business and go from 0 to 1. So shoot us an email if you have any questions overall. But Hammond, I know next week we were going to talk about and discuss an interesting topic, which I think some people are perhaps more interested in than others. What is it we are going to talk about next week, my friend?
Hey, it's a lot of interesting topics. So, most of the time I look at like challenges in e-commerce and what's coming next. So I think next time we're going to be talking about like more of the challenges that e-commerce stores are facing, probably
Mm,
more news oriented, like what you hear about, the tariffs,
mm.
like all of this, I would say, fear